there's no reason to have at Jackson State if Deion's not there. He brought in Travis Hunter, who's the best player in college football, and he had him playing FCS, below traditional FCS level. So, of course, he was good and dominant, and obviously Shedeur was above that level as well. It was like playing down a grade. They played JV football, and they dominated JV football. Then they went to Colorado, and they tried to flip the thing, and it was really hard. It's one of the best years ever in the Pac-12, was their first year in the Pac-12. Then, frankly, in all honesty, they stepped down a level. The Big 12 this year is not as good as the Pac-12 last year, and they've improved some. They've improved. Competition's not as good, and now they're on pace to potentially win the Big 12. But I heard this weekend, and now Michael Irvin goes on Colin Cowherd and says it, this idea of Deion and Shedeur being a package deal in the NFL. And it's really, really interesting. I don't think you hear this from multiple people unless Deion is telling multiple people. If you want to get me to the NFL, I'm going to coach my kid. Here's Mike Orvin.
That if Shedeur went to the Cowboys, Deion would accept the job.
I believe 100%. And I can tell you, good sources have told me that. Great sources have told me that. That's all I can say like that without violating anything else.
I'm not really violating anything else. I mean, obviously that means I've talked to Deion Sanders. But the I was wrong thing that people want to say, like, I wasn't. I told you I thought eventually it would work. You get good play, you get better players than the rest of the league has. You have the best player in the country, plays both ways. You have a really good college quarterback who's probably a pro quarterback. You know, it's going to be potentially a first-round draft pick. In a league that is devoid of that level of talent at the top. I mean, go around that league. We don't have crazy talent at quarterback. Gone are the days of, you pick it, Sam Bradford, number one overall pick, all the Oklahoma guys. Those guys are all gone. And if anybody's not paying attention, I am. The SEC has the best teams. Do you know why? Because they spend the most money. Crazy. Right? And as much as you're like, well, in baseball, you can do Moneyball. Sure. In baseball, you can. And in a one-game scenario, maybe you can. And in college football, if you can hold on to players for a long time, the problem with it is, it's basically yearly free agency. So it's impossible to grow and to have guys together for 3, 4. That's what Clemson's trying to do. Right? Keep their guys, but you still have to spend. Can you, in a one-game scenario, take down an Alabama, take down an LSU, take down a Georgia? Sure. Can you in an eight-game season? No. In a 3-game playoff? No. It's like Indiana taking on Ohio State. One game, could you beat Ohio State? Sure. If you played a 7-game series, they win 6-1. And Ohio State, I don't care. They play one more game in the Big Ten. So one more game against who? There's basically 6 teams at least that belong in the college football playoff from the SEC. At least. It's better. They have better players. And they have better depth. And so, yeah, they lose more games because they play against better teams week after week after week after week. Anyway, I digress. The issue with Deion, and I think he knows this, and he said as much, the issue with Deion coaching in the NFL is, with Deion, it's always been about Deion. Always. And by the way, as many of you who listen to the show know, my issue with Deion wasn't in trying to change the culture of Colorado football and getting fan support. It's the showing of a watch. It's the running your mouth when you get run off the field. It's the blatant and utter kind of disrespect of the opponent back when they're losing. And if you've noticed, they're not nearly as obnoxious now when they're winning. Because everyone knows, what are we doing here? You look like clowns. You just do. Now you want to be the best team in the country. You want to have the best player in the country. You want to win a Heisman Trophy. I mean, listen, even Travis Hunter, like, hey, strike the Heisman pose once. That's great. I think you should win the Heisman. Multiple times in the same game, like somebody needs to go like, dude, slow it down. But the problem with Deion being an NFL head coach is it's always about Deion. He's not alone. That's a problem with most college football coaches. Why most college football coaches don't become great NFL coaches. Because in the NFL, it has to be about the players. Now, in Dallas, could it work? I guess, right? The only thing that maybe Jerry would respect is an ego as big as Deion's ego. But then there's that little thing about, I don't know, $130 million owed to Dak Prescott for the next 3 years. Like, this is what I hate about sports media. It is. And I said this as much. I was on Andrew Marchand has a podcast. And I said, like, we just create these scenarios which are not possible. Will the Cowboys fire Mike McCarthy? Very likely, yes. But they just signed Dak Prescott to an extension. He's the quarterback. No quarterback is drafted, especially one whose dad is the coach, and sits for 3 years. And it'd be a redundancy. Why would you draft a quarterback in the first round to not play him for at least 2 years, maybe even 3? You wouldn't. Like, the whole scenario sounds great until you dig in and go like, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. There's no scenario that the Cowboys trade Dak Prescott because no one's going to take that contract. Dak Prescott coming off another injury, and he hasn't been that good. And so, yeah, I'm going to take on this brand new contract just so the Cowboys can play Shedeur. Saying, like, what? Do I think that Deion wants to package himself with Shedeur to be his coach in the NFL? Sure. Do I think the Cowboys are the team? I don't. It makes sense to Deion because he played there. It makes sense to Deion because the only place his ego could probably exist is in Dallas. And I'm sure Shedeur dreamed of playing there. The reality is there's just no path for that. There's just no path for that. Byron, am I wrong? Do you see any sort of path to Shedeur? Forget about Deion, to Shedeur Sanders being the quarterback of the Cowboys.
Well, I do think the Cowboys will have to be bad enough to get up there, and right now they're sitting there, I think, in the 9th. Not far off because of how bad their record is. It's just that there's so many bad teams in the NFL, and honestly, the draft is so poor that from the quarterback position, you're going to have probably about 3 or 4 teams that are going to be quarterback needy that could pick ahead of the Dallas Cowboys. So they may have to make a deal if they wanted to move up to get Shedeur Sanders, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yes, but again, it's more of the, like, if the Cowboys did draft in the top 5, why would they take a quarterback?
Sure. Tell it to the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be unheard of to, considering what they did with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. The reason why I wouldn't put it past it, if I can branch out on something that I was thinking about last night, and I even touched on this on our I Want Your Flex pod. This is all optics with the Cowboys, kind of like it is with Colorado, in the sense of it's no denying the talents of Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, and for what those things are obvious. Just like CeeDee Lamb is great, just like Jerry Stadium is huge, and the whole deal. But it's also what the guts are. What are the guts of that place? What are the guts of Colorado football? And I think the Cowboys' lack of guts in their team construction has showed why they're a 3-win team so far this year. I think Jerry and how he runs his organization and his palace that he has shows that maybe there's something wrong with the guts when metal paneling or panels are falling from the ceiling 3 to 4 hours before kickoff. Like, there's something that is just so of show and glitz and glamour, but when you get down to it, there's just not the guts of the matter. And so in that case, with everything, it almost would be a match made in heaven. But if then Shedeur Sanders was the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, even if you signed Dak, I don't know what kind of team building then you're doing to solidify the Cowboys as an organization.
You're not. And the last 2 times the Cowboys have been good, right? They've had the best offensive line in the sport.
Yes.
So I don't think the Cowboys are run by complete idiots.
They are not.
I think we act like Jerry, and all things Jerry says comes to fruition. No, Jerry does re-sign his own guys. He always acquiesces. But he also doesn't really have control of the con, if you will, when it comes to drafting. And whoever's been drafting has been doing a really good job up until recently, right? They also, what's the name of the linebacker who had the neck problem? Like, he was a hell of a player.
Leighton Vander Esch.
Right? He's a hell of a player. Then he hurt his neck. The offensive line aged out. And go ahead.
No, from 2010, I ran it down on the pod that's available wherever you get your podcasts. I Want Your Flex. Of all of the first-round picks that they have hit since 2010, and I would venture, I didn't run the numbers, but they are more successful, I would say, than 75% of their counterparts in the NFL for having first-round picks.
Yeah,
work.
Like they do a good job.
Yeah,
it's crazy. You have people who say like, "Oh, what Jerry Jones? He's terrible." Like, again, there's never been a guy outside of me and now you that have gone like, they've actually done a really good job of drafting, a good job of team building. This was a bad year in that, they had a defensive coordinator who I thought did an amazing job. Now he's doing an amazing job in Washington. They replaced him with a guy who's a bad fit for their personnel, plus the personnel wasn't good, and they got caught with some bad contracts and kind of a tweener sort of year. And then it got worse because of injuries on defense, and then made even worse because of now the Dak injury.
Yeah.
And here they are. And yeah, I mean, like, look, could it have been better if they signed Derrick Henry? Yeah. But would they be a playoff team? I don't know for sure, but my guess is no, because their defense has been an abject disaster. Just has. And their offensive line's not that good, so I don't care who their running back is. You can't block for them, it doesn't matter. One of the reasons the Ravens' running game is so good is they've invested a ton of money in the offensive line to protect Lamar Jackson and run the football. But I'm not sure if you've I know you have recognized, but other people recognize spending all that money on offense. Guess what sucks with the Ravens? The defense. So I'm not sucking up to Jerry Jones or to the Dallas Cowboys. But for the last 5 years, up until this year, all the football people I've talked to, like, they got good personnel. Don't always love their coaching. Don't always love their quarterback play, but he's solid. He's good. But they got really good personnel overall on the team. This is a year where they got caught. And then they got injured. And then they felt like they had to redo Dak's deal in order to get those other deals done. And so what's likely to happen is you trade Micah Parsons, you get a first round, you probably get 2 first-round picks for him, and you completely rebuild the team. But you don't do that with Shedeur Sanders. That doesn't make any sense. None. So this feels like a made-for-TV, first take, old school, undisputed, whatever argument where you're like, would Jerry hire Deion, and do those egos all make for a good TV show? Yes. But as Dan has said in paying attention, Cowboys actually do a good job of drafting. And, oh, yeah, by the way, they just signed Dak to an extension, and it goes live next year. It makes zero sense to have a quarterback making $130 million guaranteed over the next 3 years and then draft a top 10 replacement quarterback and have him sit for 3 years. Nobody does that. Hasn't been done. In an emergency, you want Rapid Radio's instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies for clear national LTE coverage and one-touch communication. Peace of mind for communicating with family in an emergency. Go to rapidradios.com now for up to 60% off. All right, coming up next in the